Hi everyone, this is Zoe. I'm back with another summary episode of the American Chess Magazine puzzle calendar. Honestly, keeping to a strict schedule is so difficult. I'll just be posting whenever I have time. So let's jump into the puzzles. This was the puzzle for February 23rd. It was composed by Henry Mendes da Costa in 1921. Again, all the puzzles in this series are white to move, mate in 2. If you want to try to solve this puzzle for yourself, then go ahead and pause the video here. So this puzzle, I'd give a difficulty rating of 6 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. So in this position, the first thing I noticed when solving it was that bishop d4 is almost checkmate, but of course the only problem is black can take. So I tried a variety of ways to make bishop d4 work. First, I tried rook takes f4 with the idea of just supporting bishop d4 checkmate, but the problem here is that black can play knight to c6, and white doesn't really have anything because if you take the knight, that's too slow, and now bishop d4, this square is guarded. So the next thing I tried to support bishop d4 was b takes c3. Again, the idea is to allow bishop d4, but this fails in the same way. Black can still play knight c6, and white does not have mate in 1. So then I came up with this really cool idea of playing queen c4. The idea is bishop d4 still. If bishop takes, then d4 is checkmate. But I think the problem with this one, and here if knight c6, then white has queen takes f4 checkmate, so that was the point. But here, black has the opportunity to play something like knight e6 check, and white's in check, so white has to respond, and d takes e6 is not checkmate, so this is not mate in 2. The reason that, for example, this wouldn't work against, for example, rook f4 is that after knight e6 check, white's queen was guarding this e6 square, and queen takes e6 came with checkmate. So queen c4, it enabled queen takes f4, but allowed knight e6 check. So then I started trying for a different route. I noticed that black's pieces were all kind of restricted. The bishop couldn't move because of d4. That was kind of my big light bulb. The pawn can't move because of queen a1 checkmate. This knight can't move because of queen e6. This pawn can't move because of queen to d6. And basically, and this pawn cannot move because bishop d4. And so all that was left was the two problems. One, black could still take the rook, and two, black could still move this knight. So I started by looking at this knight. This knight is currently guarding c6 and d7. So my first thought was to play knight f6. Now if the knight moves, then knight d7 is checkmate. And conveniently, this move knight f6 also stops h takes g4. Knight takes g4 is checkmate. So again, to recap all black's options, bishop moves runs into d4 checkmate. Pawn takes runs into queen a1. f3 runs into bishop d4, e takes f6, or e6, there's queen takes f6. Sorry, if e6, there's queen d6. If the knight moves, then queen e6 is checkmate. And that's all of black's options. So this puzzle, it wasn't immediately obvious that it was about Zugzwang, but once you found it, it was kind of a neat pattern. That's why I gave this a difficulty rating of 6 out of 10 and a satisfaction of 4.5 out of 5. This was the puzzle for February 24th. It was composed by Carl Jespersen in 1901. Again, if you want to solve the puzzle for yourself, then pause the video here. So for me, this puzzle had a difficulty rating of 8 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 3 out of 5. The reason that I'm less satisfied with this puzzle is because it was so hard. It looks like white has so many pieces on the board, so they should be able to mate really easily. But, it's actually quite difficult. Because the thing is, Black's king has 3 escape routes here. So in the beginning, I tried some, random moves, like moving my queen around or something. But in the end, I think a more systematic approach was to look at each individual escape square and see how white could counter those. So if we enter a null move, so if we pretend it's black's move, king c4 immediately gets mated in 1 by knight b6, so we don't need to worry about that. And then king to e6 is almost mate for white. After knight d7, black can run to f7 or d7. And after king to c6, white has absolutely nothing to try to checkmate. So those were the 3 king moves to worry about. King c4 I just decided not to look at because it already got countered by mate in 1. So then the key for me was after seeing king e6, the king can run to these 2 squares on the 7th rank. I decided to try the move queen to h7. Of course, this comes after I try a bunch of other random queen moves. I don't remember all of them, but I'm pretty sure I tried something like queen to b1, stupid moves hanging the queen, also moving the queen to h3 or g1, trying to cut off the king. Those don't end up working. For example, if queen to g1, I think was one I definitely thought about for a while, the king can just run to e6, and after queen g8, the king can go here. The queen has a lot of maneuvers that white does need to look at individually, so it's really, really annoying. If queen h3, cutting this king off, black has king to c6, not king to c4, because again, knight b6 is checkmate. But after king c6, queen e6, the knight can block, so white again does not have mate in 1. Therefore, I finally ended up on queen to h7. So the idea of queen to h7 is now if the king moves to e6, knight c7, and the queen is covering these escape squares, so this is checkmate. If king to c6, then queen b7 is conveniently checkmate because the knights are covering the 2 squares. So after queen to h7, black's only choices are to move this knight or this knight. After knight takes e2, then queen takes e4 is checkmate, or any knight move from the knight on c3 will result in queen takes e4 checkmate. And this knight moving is a lot more complicated. You have to go through them one by one. If knight takes f6, then white has the option of, hang on, what was it? I think here white can play queen b7 checkmate because the rook was opened up. Originally this one, after queen h7, originally this one happened checkmate because the king could run to e6. If knight to d6 covering this b7 square, then white has knight b6 checkmate. Hang on, this is not checkmate, black can run here. White has knight e7 checkmate. The idea is that the knight is blocking the king's own escape square. Again, if we look over here, knight e7 is met by king d6. And finally, if black tries knight c5 to guard the b7 square, then white has white has knight b4 checkmate because again the knight is stepping on the king's escape square. So the reason I gave this difficulty rating of 8 out of 10 is because first of all it's not easy to see this idea because you have to know to restrict the king's escape squares, and even then it's kind of like an exhaustive search of all of the opponent's legal moves because each knight move has a different refutation. That's really annoying. That's why I lowered the satisfaction rating to 3 out of 5. Puzzle for the weekend, February 25th to 26th. It was composed by Bruno Colaneri in 2021. Again, if you want to solve this question for yourself, then pause the video here. So this puzzle, I give a difficulty rating of 3 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 4 out of 5. So this puzzle, I think it was pretty simple for me because immediately I saw the king looks kind of trapped. So let's try queen f7 check. And for like half a second, I thought this would be my final answer because I'm like, oh yeah, after queen f6, then rook a2 is checkmate because the queen is pinned. But of course, chessbase won't let me play this move because it's actually illegal. Queen f6 comes with counter check on white's king. White would probably have to take, and this is, of course, not mate in 2. So then after that, I tried to find ways to stop the queen from coming to f6, and there's really only one way, like d4. And black cannot take this pawn because the queen is pinned to the king. The king cannot escape, so black has, and if black takes the queen, then rook takes a2 is checkmate. So black has no defense to this. I thought the puzzle was a bit too easy, so I was looking for like maybe defense in queen d2, and if queen f7, the queen can block diagonally. But no matter where black's queen moves along the second rank, here to go here, here to go here, or to e2 to block on f3. No matter where black's queen goes, white can always just take the queen and it will end up being checkmate. So for example, here, queen takes d2 is checkmate. Black amazingly had no defense to d4. That's why I gave this puzzle a difficulty rating of 3 out of 10. And it was pretty satisfying, but like it was just a bit too short. That's why I gave it satisfaction rating of 4 out of 5. This was the puzzle for February 27th. It was composed by Francisco de Rosa in 2000. Again, white to move mate in 2. If you want to solve it for yourself, then pause the video here. So this puzzle, for me, had a difficulty rating of 5 out of 10 and a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. So this puzzle is, it looks very complicated because so many pieces on the board. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly where to start. I just start by randomly playing moves and seeing why they fail. Bishop d3 check is not mate because king takes d5. Rook e7 check is not mate because of king takes f5. Queen e8 check is not mate because queen takes e8. So in this position, that immediately drew my attention to the fact that if I could guard this knight, then rook e7 would be checkmate. So the first one I considered was knight g to h6 with the idea of guarding this knight. Now, if rook b1 check, then queen takes b1 does come with checkmate. So here, black has to find the defensive move of, actually, I think black might have more than one. Queen takes d5 doesn't work because bishop d3 is mate. But here, I think black can play, hang on. I think here black can play knight f4 with the idea of rook e7, then knight e6 is blocking. The reason knight f4 wouldn't work in the starting position is because knight f2 would be checkmate. So knight to e3, this with the idea of guarding d5 to potentially allow bishop d3 checkmate, also guarding the knight to allow rook e7. This fails in the same way. Black can again play knight f4. If rook e7 check, then the knight just blocks. So then here I start to lose hope with the ideas of like guarding the pieces and giving checkmate. So I considered rook d3. Rook d3 also looks very promising. It's threatening mate in 1. If bishop takes and rook takes d4 is still checkmate. But here, black can play rook b1 check, and now queen takes b1 is not mate because your rook is blocking your own queen. So that was really frustrating. Finally, I ended up on the correct answer, which is knight f to e3. The idea is you're still guarding d5, so you're threatening rook e7. You're also threatening bishop d3 because, okay, bishop d3 you're threatening because the d5 pawn is guarded, and you're threatening rook e7 because the knight is no longer hanging. The key point is now if knight f4, white has rook takes f4 checkmate. If rook b1, queen takes b1 is still checkmate. And if rook takes d6, white again has queen b1. So this puzzle was a lot about trial and error, finding the moves that looks like they sort of work, but they don't necessarily completely work, and finding a way to fix the problems that arise. Also, always looking at your opponent's moves. If you know the process of these puzzles, then it becomes a little bit more easy. That's why I gave this puzzle a difficulty rating of 5 out of 10, and it was quite satisfying with all the pieces on the board and how everything just happened to restrict everything else. That's why I gave this a satisfaction rating of 5 out of 5. For today, February 28th, it was composed by Hans Georg Mathus in 1981. Again, white to move mate in 2. If you want to solve this puzzle for yourself, then go ahead and pause the video here. So for me, this puzzle, I have to say the difficulty rating is just 1 out of 10. It was kind of simple for me. And the satisfaction is still 4.5 out of 5. So this puzzle looks rather simple because there's so few pieces on the board. And I think this is kind of a common mating pattern. Like once the first move I looked at immediately was bishop f5, just the idea of removing this defender pawn as the defender. If takes, then rook takes h5 is checkmate. And black's only other legal move is king h7, but then rook takes h5 is checkmate because the pawn is pinned to the king. So this puzzle, I gave it difficulty rating of 1 out of 10 just because once you find the move, it's really, really easy to double check. Like black literally has only 2 legal moves and both of them lead to mate in 1 quite simply. So, but it's still quite pretty and it's a classic mating pattern. That's why I gave it a satisfaction rating of 4.5 out of 5. This puzzle calendar summary update was supposed to be posted, I think, on Saturday. So thank you all for waiting until this time. I was kind of behind in the puzzles. So I just decided to do all the puzzles for February in one fell swoop. So that is all for today. As always, if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. Comment below how many of the puzzles that you managed to solve. Bye!